up to 3 minutes. They don't have to take 3 minutes, but they will then be cut off at 3 minutes, even in mid-sentence. So I'm just giving you a warning. And then it'll be your opportunity afterwards not to ask questions publicly, but they will be then around the building, and it's for you to go and engage in conversation, meaningful conversation, so that you can go and ask questions of each of them and confront them. I suggest we try to be, floor's yours for 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah, hello, good evening. I'll try not to use my entire 3 minutes because there's quite a lot of us up here. But thanks, Peter and Duncan, for this. I think this facility that's established and sort of developing here is a good example of what I would like to see more of in Bournemouth. Facilities for communities, for people to meet and to engage. I work mostly in conflict resolution, conflict management, looking at engagement processes that try to deter people from exclusion, whether it's self-exclusion or whether somebody's inviting somebody away from more mainstream, more useful activities. And I travel an awful lot over the country, and I see different towns, say, 6 months apart at different times. And I'm noticing a gradual decay, I have to say. I'm a rosy-eyed optimist, mostly. I stood for election here as a parliamentary candidate for the Liberal Democrats, so I must have a vein of optimism in me. But I'm beginning to be quite challenged in that optimism. And I'm seeing some of the things across Bournemouth that I'm seeing in some of our cities, some of our bigger cities, our bigger conurbations, especially on the outskirts of Manchester. More visible homelessness, a decaying in the structure of the roads, potholes, the simple things, the texture stuff. I'm away for a while, I come back and I notice some changes. I notice altercations happening in the street. I notice more visible sort of drinking, and the sirens appear to be going off in this town of ours as much as they go off in big cities. Now, I'm not going to blame Bob or Blair for this. I think they're decent candidates. But I think Bournemouth, with the growing new council, BCP, needs a fresh set of voices, and we need a proportional set of voices as well. It's astonishing for me that in the United Kingdom at this stage, we're on the edge of something quite dramatic. We can have a council that is elected 35% of support of a 40% turnout. So I implore people, those gathered here tonight, to think seriously about the potential mix and the proportionality. You've got more than one choice with each ballot paper. I actually went and delivered leaflets for the Green Party in Winton. We're not standing in Winton, and my choice to do so was one of a desire and an absolute belief in my work and in my political interests that coalition and consensus seeking and problem solving is far more useful than dogma. And I think we need fresh, new, independent voices. Gary and Henry are standing for Liberal Democrat candidates in West Southbourne, and I think they can offer a fresh view. You'll hear from them a bit later on, a fresh view, and take into the council some creative problem solving and openness and transparency that I think is very, very greatly lacking at the moment. I can see Peter making a 3 minutes nearly up gesture. I would be more than happy to share more thoughts with you later on, but thanks for your time.
Just put this one up a bit, please. And our next candidate is Alan Davidson from the Labour Party.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, okay. My name's Alan Davidson, as you've heard, and I feel I want to just talk about why I joined the Labour Party and what I want to do as a councillor. I suppose as a child I saw things that most of you, I hope, never saw. I grew up in Bradford in Yorkshire, and the poverty levels were just extraordinary, and it affected me for up until now. One of the children I went to school with, my best friend, was called Michael, and I still have a picture in my head of this poor little kid, thin shirt, very poor blazer, standing freezing in a Bradford winter. And when I went round to his house, we saw unbelievable poverty. I mean, not just poverty, but I would call it abject poverty. My parents were wonderful. We used to fill up boxes and take around groceries and leave them there late at night. They never knew it was happening. They didn't know who did it. And I suppose that's what burnt into my mind, a desire to make sure that everybody had a fair chance. Michael didn't. And we're moving back, to my horror, back into the same situation. Victorian diseases are coming back into the country. Parents are struggling to feed their children. Teachers asking children whether they've had a meal or not. And my dream is, as a councillor, to do the best I can. Well, I know it's partly about national government, obviously, but we need, as a council, to fight against national government when it's attacking our own people. But I have dreams for this area as well. It's crazy that this area doesn't have a proper park and ride system. Winchester has 4, I think, am I right? And because of that, we have our roads packed, we have pollution, and we don't have as many people coming here as we could have. So that's one of my dreams, to make that happen, to get our roads cleared to as large a degree as we can. I want to see apprenticeships back. We put too much emphasis on people getting degrees. That's great, but it's not enough. We need to have highly skilled people, and that will keep our economy going. That will help prevent poverty. And I can't help but agree with John. You know, we're seeing things happening around Southbourne that are pretty horrendous. We're seeing people who are homeless, people dying of the cold, and we can do a little bit, just as this church does. They're linked up with other churches and they fight to help people who don't have enough food to eat. I don't want it to carry on. I know we've got good, well-intentioned Conservatives, but we also need a good balance, as John said. So please, give us a chance to actually make those changes, to stand up and be a voice for you, to clean up our streets, to make the society a better one, a more moral one, a more decent one. I've taken up much time. Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
And next, Sarah Bedford on behalf of Jane Ball from the Green Party.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Now, can you hear all right? You may notice that my name's Sarah, not Jane. This is Jane here, and unfortunately she couldn't make it tonight. So she's standing in East Southbourne and Tuckton, and she sent me something to read out on her behalf, and then I'll just talk a bit from the Green Party. Can I just ask for a show of hands, how many of you are East Southbourne and Tuckton? Okay. And are the rest of you, are you West Southbourne? Hands up, West Southbourne. Anyone else? Sue, get your hand down. Sue's also in the Green Party. She's standing in Boscombe East and Folkestone. So more West Southbourne than East Southbourne. Okay, so you probably will have noticed that the Green Party doesn't have anyone standing in West Southbourne. So I'll come back to that. So I'm kind of afraid that a lot of my comments are mostly directed at the minority of you who are East Southbourne and Tuckton. So Jane, this is Jane, she is the local Green Party treasurer. She grew up in Boscombe from the age of 2 and went to school in Southbourne. So she attended Beaufort. Anyone else an ex-Beaufort person? No, my mum was a teacher there. So, and her reasons for standing are that she also wants people to have a real choice and vote for a difference. She cares very deeply about the environment and is into more sustainable lifestyles for people. If you do want to ask her anything, I'm happy to pass on questions to her. She's happy for you to do that. I might talk a little bit about West Southbourne. So Jane's husband is Simon Ball. Simon is a councillor at the moment in Bournemouth. He's the only party non-Conservative councillor. Okay. So he's the lone voice in the wilderness, if you like, amongst all those Conservatives. And I agree that we need a scope, different opinions, different voices in the council. It's not good for any of us, it's not good for democracy if everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet, things get nodded through. You've probably seen, like me, that we've been featured in Rotten Boroughs, Bournemouth. There's scandals going on locally. We need more different opinions in the council. We need more transparency. We need different voices. So, all right, I'll skip over them. So we're not standing in West Southbourne. So to you West Southbourne people, personally, I'm very disappointed. I've lived in West Southbourne for 50 years. I would have stood. But we cooperated with the Liberal Democrats, so they're not standing against us. where we have our Green Councillor, so he has a greater chance of winning. And we're not standing in West Southbourne, so they have a greater chance of winning. Okay. So hopefully that way there'll be at least 2 other people from different parties in the council, in this new historic council that we're getting this year. Personally, I'm very disappointed, but I do want to say, bigger picture, I am aware that a lot of you are living sustainable lifestyles, recycling, cycling, public transport, anti-plastic litter pick. Thank you very much for doing that, and please carry on doing that. Thank you.
Southbourne Tuckton, we have Tony College, who's from the Labour Party.
Thank you. Hello everybody. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself and why I want to stand and what I feel passionate about. So I'm a resident of Southbourne. I've lived here for 14 years. I lived in Boscombe before that. I was born in the Royal Victoria Hospital in Boscombe, and I'm Bournemouth born and bred. I have 2 nephews, aged 1 and 3, who also live locally, and I think a lot about their future and what kind of a society they're going to grow up in. I work full-time as a social work manager with children and families, and I've been working to support disadvantaged people and protect children for the last 20 years. I joined the Labour Party because I feel it stands for equality, for compassion and for social justice. I think we're all equally important, and I believe it's the job of councillors to try and level the playing field so that everybody has an equal chance to succeed. I want to see our town thrive financially and socially, whilst leading the way on environmental responsibility. So I'd like to just echo actually what the last lady said, which was if I was elected to the council, I'd work really hard to make sure that decisions are properly debated and scrutinised, and the business is conducted fairly and openly. I've worked for Dorset County Council for 12 years, and I kind of understand how councils work, and I've seen from the inside what impact the cuts have had and the approach a council takes, and I have seen that over the last sort of 10-15 years, this real push for outsourcing, for privatisation, and I've seen how that actually doesn't work, and how we're sort of paying more and more for services which are less and less effective. So that's something I feel really strongly about. I think if we want the best for our money and we want the best for our people, we should have more in-house services. So I would strongly advocate for that. I think things like children's centres are incredibly important. There's lots and lots of research which shows that it works. The outcomes for GCSEs for children are the single biggest predictor for those are how children are doing at the age of 5. Those first few years can really set out the course of somebody's life. Yet we've had 53% cuts to early years funding. So 30 seconds. So what I would say is if I was on the council, I would look at a different approach, which is about investing to save. So where at the moment everybody's making cuts, which they have to do, but this I feel is storing up long-term expense for the future. I think we should be investing in preventative services now, and that will benefit us financially and socially in the long term.
Conservative.
Thank you, Peter. Good evening. What a fantastic building this is. That's the first time I've been in it since Peter done this, and I'd never realised there's a beautiful coffee shop there next door. I've been a councillor since 2007. Now, you must excuse my accent, just to make you totally aware, although I was born and bred in Oxford, it's just to avoid any confusion about where I come from originally. I was actually born and bred in Liverpool. I was brought up on a council estate in Liverpool, a very tough council estate. So I just wanted to allay those fears that people have, that all Conservative people are born with silver spoons in their mouths. I wasn't. I was born with a brass spoon in my mouth. When I left school, I became an apprentice, and then I joined the Merchant Navy, and after the Merchant Navy, I joined a major PLC. I worked for that PLC for a number of years. I then worked for another major PLC, and the first PLC I was headhunted back to. I became a very senior manager within that PLC. I ran a large operation with about 4,500 to 5,000 people who worked within that company. I took early retirement. When I took early retirement, after 6 months, I became bored, and I ended up for 3 years becoming a postman. Wonderful job, absolutely adored it. Talk about going from the top to the bottom was quite an experience, I can tell you. And my delivery round was Carberry and Watcombe, if anybody knows those areas. I was a postman on those two roads for about 2.5 to 3 years. Wonderful experience, wonderful time, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. My time as a councillor, I've been as a councillor since 2007. My present responsibilities within the council, I look after housing. Housing within Bournemouth, where it is all the council houses come under my authority, if you like. I build council houses. I've set up 2 companies within the council to build council houses. The profits that those companies make goes back to the council, so it helps to boost and keep the council tax down. If I hadn't set those companies up, those profits that those 2 companies make would have been outside the company. So I'm extremely proud of achieving that within the council. I believe, as all the previous speakers have mentioned, I look after people. Myself and Blair are very people aware. We respond to people when they contact us. I'm very aware of the previous speakers' points about the environment. Bournemouth is one of the best environmental councils within the country. But there's more we could do, and there's more that we will do. I'm extremely proud of our recycling record, which is probably one of the top ones within the country. The plastics is an issue which Sue and people go on about. I totally recognise that. But I believe that we, as a community and as councillors, can build Bournemouth and Southbourne. I've lived in Southbourne for over 30 years, so I'm not born and bred, but I'm a member of the community along with you people. And thank you for your time, and thank you, Peter, for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
And now I call Chris Main, who's standing as an independent.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much again to Peter for inviting us all here this evening and putting this little event on, which is hopefully very useful to you. A lot of people probably may know me already from various things. I've lived in Southbourne for the best part of 40 years. Many moons ago, I used to have a retail shop in Grand Avenue, but that's in a former life. I've been involved as on the council for the last 8 years, representing the good folks of West Southbourne, and would very much like to continue the work which I've been doing. In recent times, I've been on the Environment and Transport Scrutiny Panel, Management Committee, Russell Coates Museum, and prior to that, a few years back, on the Health Overview and Scrutiny Panel and Planning Board member. Had heard people speak today about, somewhat negatively, I feel, sometimes about Southbourne, but and Bournemouth in general. I regard myself very much as a positive person and like to look at all the good things that are happening in and around Southbourne. I've been fortunate enough to be at the forefront of so many events that we've been putting on in Southbourne over the last, say, 10 years, particularly in Fisherman's Walk and things like that. And I'll certainly be supporting those in the future, whatever happens. Also, I've been very much involved with the Local Traders Association, supporting local traders. And in case anyone hasn't noticed, I think Southbourne High Street has certainly bucked the trend in the last 10 years. You can count the number of empty shops, probably on one hand, and I think they've done a fantastic job, the Traders Association, and it's full credit for them and all the people who live in Southbourne and the local traders. Many of you remember I was fortunate enough to become Mayor of Bournemouth back in 2014-15, and it was so fantastic to be Bournemouth's first citizen and promoting all that was good and great about the town. It was something which I always treasure and really enjoyed that time. I lived in West Southbourne pretty well all my life, and now just round the corner in Starwood Avenue. I've got an outdoor interest. I'm still trying to play the odd game of cricket. I play for the local bowls club in Southbourne. I'm also chairman of Friends of St Peter's Church, and also on the committee down at the Beaufort Community Centre, which is another thing which Beaufort Community Centre, great asset to the local area. Time of it, right? Okay. And but you come and talk to me afterwards, and I've got some leaflets over there, and look forward to speaking to many of you, and look forward to being your representative again in a couple of days' time. Thanks so much.
Corrie Drew, you're going to come and share with us some thoughts as a Labour candidate.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name's Corrie. I'm also a resident of Southbourne. I actually moved to Bournemouth, to the area 19 years ago when I was 18 to do a voluntary position, which was only supposed to be for a year, and it was actually working for a church over in Poole with vulnerable young people. And I loved it here so much, and I couldn't believe how beautiful our beach and our natural surroundings were, and I never wanted to go back to the Midlands. There's something about being in a landlocked area that didn't suit me. But I grew up on a council estate in the Midlands and felt very privileged to be able to then come and live my life in such a beautiful place. And I've always found it quite difficult to afford to live here. I've done a lot of work for social services and for the local housing association. Quite a lot of the work we have in Bournemouth is that type of work where people have a 0-hour contract and they get paid quite low wages for quite responsible work. And I've spent a number of years in that sort of employment and also renting in the area. I've now rented here for about 19 years. And it's given me a real insight into the lives of a lot of the people that make up our community here. I've also got a very good understanding of Southbourne. It's been my home for a great many years. I've really enjoyed being part of the High Street. The community here is amazing. Obviously, our High Street is really something to be proud of when we see what's happening in other areas. And I think it's so important to support those local businesses. And I think we have a wonderful, diverse community here. Obviously, it's a beautiful place to live, and I'm very, very proud to be part of it. I've worked for a couple of the local businesses during my time here, and I think that by being part of the community and by knowing the area very well, it's a really good position to come from to be able to actually understand some of the needs of our area. We've spent a lot of time over the last year, particularly speaking to residents in Southbourne, trying to identify what the specific needs and concerns are of people that live in our area. And therefore, what we've tried to do as Labour is to look at how we can respond to those concerns specifically for this ward. But I think it's really important that we view the position of a councillor as one of public service, which it is. And it would be very important to me to be able to use my experience and the experience that I've gained from conversations with others to actually then act on those things and to make sure that I don't sit and wait for somebody to come to me with a problem, but that actually if I was your councillor, that I would be proactively engaging, as we've been doing, coming, speaking to people on their doorsteps, offering a variety of different ways to get engaged with us so that you can bring your concerns to us and know that you will see those followed up on. It's very important to us that we are public servants in that way. And I think for me, the key issues personally that I campaign for tend to be mainly around the environment and around housing, which I think are issues that are very close to many people's hearts in Bournemouth. And I'd be very happy to answer questions about those at the end. Thank you very much.
Henry from the Lib Dems, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Henry. I'm relatively new to politics. I got interested around 3 years ago. I had many of my friends teachers and doctors. A lot of the teachers were leaving their professions and many of the doctors were going on strike. But that is national issues, not local issues. On the local side of things, I live down Cranley Road. West Southbourne's a fantastic place to live. Absolutely love it here. Most of my work at the moment is over in Lymington, I work in the marine industry. My wife works in central Bournemouth. She cycles to work every day, mainly along the promenade. So looking into how we can work and expand on cycle routes is of interest to me. The main reason why I'm standing is because I do think that we need more diversity on the council. We have too many politicians from the same party who've been there for too long, and I believe that leads to complacency, and there are questionable use of funds. And without proper opposition, I believe this could continue or possibly get worse. what we need to look at is social housing as well. In 2016, 2017, there were 12 social housing units built in Bournemouth, and we have...
No, there wasn't. You can ask them after.
We have a waiting list in the thousands, and I know this is very, very close to people's hearts. Without adequate housing, then we start to see the other issues on the streets with begging and with antisocial behaviour as well. So if we can sort the housing, that will lead to an improvement in other areas which are raised as concerns. That's the main key message. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to talk to me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. And just got two to go. Blair Crawford from the Conservative Party, and he is a standing councillor at the moment of this ward.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for coming. My passion is people. For 40 years I was director of the YMCA here in Bournemouth, and like Corey, I'm a youth worker, qualified youth worker. And so all of the things that the candidates have spoken about passionately are also my passion. So I was for 24 years director of the YMCA here in Bournemouth, and a new Pokestown Youth Club was the last project that I worked on, which cost us 10 million to provide, and 2 children's centres and all of that, making a real difference to the lives of ordinary people. When I retired from the YMCA in 2011, I didn't want to vegetate, so I stood for the council and I was elected. But then something happened 12 months into that I hadn't really expected, and that was that I was placed on the executive, the inner core, and given the responsibility for social care in the borough. I have a special needs son. My father, who's just died, had vascular dementia, so it was close to my heart. But for the last 7 years, if I tell you that Bournemouth Council and 5 councils all up and down the country, 80% of our budget is on social care. And actually, if you look at our ward here in West Southbourne, there's a very high percentage of elderly people. But in terms of the ward, the things that people contact me about are things like overdevelopment. Yes, there is a problem with housing, but of course the land in this area, as you all know, I have a son who lives in the ward as well. Very expensive. So I tend to be contacted about overdevelopment. Obviously, community safety is a very big one. The vibrancy of the grove is very important to people. I think we're living in a great ward that is vibrant. We have a great community here. And so if I am fortunate enough to be elected again, I will continue to fight and to stand for those things, for this ward that I've come to love, and to serve you as I've tried to do over these last 8 years. So thank you for that.
I think Lisa Lewis was supposed to be here, but she's unable to be with us. But our last candidate is Gary Mitchell from the Lib Dems. Thank you.
Right, I'm Gary Mitchell and I'm currently tailing Charlie. It says writer and historian on my website, but I'm also a local lecturer and teacher at the college. And I've lived in West Southbourne since the last century. I think one of the things we have to look at here is what we can do locally. The big issues facing everywhere are national, they're the elephant in the room, I can see it at the back, but we can't address those. What we can address is the fact we've got a new opportunity with this combined tri-borough of BCP, whatever they eventually decide to call it, and this is an opportunity to combine resources and improve things across the conurbation. Transport is one area that's been addressed. Transport is appalling. Bournemouth, Poole, Christchurch are gridlocked. One of the things we can address is ways of improving the transport across the entire conurbation. Another issue that we can address, and it has been mentioned before, is the issue of housing. There are many young people coming through, I know, I've taught many of them, who have no little real opportunity getting onto a housing ladder. So we need to think about that, about the future of this town. These are the young people that we hope are going to stay here, develop our industries, our businesses, our crafts, and we need to make sure that they can afford to do so, and that means affordable housing. That's going to be an issue. I was speaking earlier to the Sarah from the Greens, who we have an agreement with on some wards, And we think that a sustainable green environment will be a way of looking at those issues. Certainly in transport, I know recently people have talked about trolley buses coming back. I vaguely remember the child on holiday here, and that might be an electric way of improving transport across the conurbation. We need to think as well about attracting industry and commerce in to the area, about the jobs for these young people coming in the future. We need to listen. We need to listen to what people say. Far too often on our rounds, you get the impression that people say, we're never consulted. Nobody ever asks us what we think. We're just told what to do in the council. And as Sarah pointed out, of course, Bournemouth has been in private eye rotten boroughs, which is not something we should be proud of. But that's gone. Bournemouth has gone, Poole has gone, Christchurch has gone. We have a new opportunity to make something of these three boroughs together, and I think we should integrate across. The final main point I want to make on that area is that we hope that it's not just going to be a one-party council. We want to build a wide range of shades of opinion, probably not 50, as many shades as we possibly can. Greens, maybe even the Labour Party if they get in, and certainly our party to provide some sort of opposition. So have we got 30 seconds? 30 seconds, thank you. So we want to build a thriving community, but we have to look beyond just our own area that we're responsible for, which is obviously in this case is West Southbourne. We have to think about linking up across the whole conurbation. And again, I come back to the theme about transport. If you have to travel, as I do as a supply teacher sometimes, unless you're on the roads by 7 o'clock, the entire town is gridlocked, and something needs to be addressed about that. Am I out of time? Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for all our speakers. Thank you for preparing to stand as well and put yourselves there. It's not a job to be envied, and it's often, you can be ridiculed or you'll be got at and everything, but it's not an easy task. I chair the forum, which is a residents forum here, and if anybody wants to join that, you're welcome. Anybody living or working in BH6, you're entitled to do that. Have a word with Duncan, he's the secretary. Give me your email and you'll hear about some of the hearings and the meetings that we call like this. Just wanted to gauge your interest in politics. Would you be interested, if it happens that we have to engage in the European elections? We're just umming and ahhing. Shall we find our MEPs and get them here? Yes. Because most people haven't got a clue who they are, and I'm one of those. And I'm all right. So